You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me today are Jeff Franke and Anna Wells. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, and each have about 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we cover the top 5 stories in manufacturing and the implications they have on the industry moving forward. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving a positive review. And finally, to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, Anna, or David at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Sorry about running a little late this week. Are we running late this week, Jeff, or are we a little early?
We're right on time, David.
Right on time?
We're right on time.
All right. As always, we are live, although on a Tuesday, so if you'd like to ask questions, please make sure to do that in the comments section. I'd also like to take a moment before we start, Anna, and thank our secondary listeners. Do you know what our secondary listeners are?
No.
Our secondary listeners are all the people that are spouses or partners of people that listen to the podcast and have to listen to their interpretation of our banter. Apparently, that's a real thing, and it causes some trouble every once in a while. Just like, I don't listen to the podcast, but my husband does, tells me about it, and I have to listen to it. So thanks. That was a positive feedback I received.
Word of mouth promotions.
That's right. So thank you to all these secondary listeners out there. All right, let's get started with our first story. CEO of Ford says absentee rates are 20% at some plants. Ford CEO Jim Farley says keeping his factories operational is a challenge. In any given week, up to 1/5 of Ford workers fail to show up. The reasons are many, but the Ford CEO says workers don't want to wear masks, which are again required in the factories. Ford and other automakers are struggling to fill gaps with temporary workers. Kristen Zizek, who is with the Center of Automotive Research, says with the forces working against the industry, quote, it's a goddamn miracle we can make a car at all. Anna, Kristen seems like she's having a rough week.
She is a straight shooter, and I like it.
That's right.
Yeah, she's almost indicating that like the chip shortage is buffering this problem a little bit for them, and you kind of wonder if they didn't have this problem, they'd be slow. I don't know. They wouldn't be able to support demand maybe if they had the chips to make all the cars that they want to right now. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Mm-hmm. So Jim Farley, as you mentioned, highlighted masks as a big problem here, though Ford and most of the other U.S. automakers have been pretty mum on the topic of vaccine mandates.
Right.
That is until last week when GM, they announced that they would be asking all of their salaried workers to report their vaccination status. So there's a lot of buzz going around the industry about what this means.
Okay.
So according to the Wall Street Journal, in a note to workers, GM said that the disclosures would help the company determine the overall immunity of its workforce and help guide its safety protocols, including ones that have to do with social distancing and masks. So GM CEO Mary Barra declined to comment on whether a vaccine mandate was being considered. And this, of course, is a discussion with the unions as well. So there's like a lot of, cooks in the kitchen, if you will. But it wouldn't be the first time the prospect of foregoing a mask had been used as like a carrot to try to get people to get the vaccine. Mm-hmm. Maybe GM is paving the way for that. I don't know. But if they did, it would give Ford certainly, I think, permission to follow suit, and then maybe that could address this absentee problem that Jim Farley seems to be believing that it's fueled by mask wearing.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see, it's the union saying like no one has approached us yet about the idea of mandating vaccines, but it seems like GM is maybe sniffing around that idea. I don't know.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, everyone is suffering from the mask thing. I think nobody likes to wear a mask, but at this point with COVID cases up, how do you keep outbreaks from occurring in a facility? That's kind of the only way outside of vaccines. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. I'm kind of watching it.
Jeff, what do you think is going to happen next? I mean, we talk about it almost weekly, how, what is it, $1 million an hour for automakers if they're shut down. So if masks aren't the answer, is a vaccine mandate the answer?
I don't know. I mean, that has the potential to get very contentious there. The UAW has come out and said, if you can, you should. Mm-hmm. They're not saying there should be mandates or anything like that, but they are, I guess, for lack of a better term, pro vaccination.
Right.
So when you look in these facilities, I think there could also be some other factors at work in addition to the COVID elements. We've talked about how much more competitive the job market is overall right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just difficult to find people in wherever you're going, whatever sector you're in. Looking at a handful of different sites, what I could come up with, the average pay at Ford plants, again, combining some different some sources here, about $24 an hour. Okay, when you're working on the plant floor, starting at about 20. So when you look at those are definitely a little bit better than some of the new job offerings or the new job markets that have really kind of expanded when you look at like restaurants and other service industries that were typically lower than that before.
Right.
These are still a little bit higher than that. When you look at the temporary workers in these auto facilities, they're coming in at about $17 an hour, and these folks have no benefits or anything else.
Yeah.
So when they talk about trying to fill some of these slots with temporary workers, they're not competitive from a salary perspective because when you look at $17 an hour, that is where a lot of server type of positions, a lot of restaurants, all those types of positions that before paid less, now they're creeping up into that 15, 16, $17 an hour. So they can't compete there.
Yeah.
So the average amount here, also when you look at other manufacturers, they're upping their game. So $20, $24 an hour, that doesn't stand out.
Yeah.
It's still extremely competitive. So I can see where Ford has difficulty potentially keeping or attracting a higher quality workforce because they're competing against so many other different people within their sector and outside of it. The other thing that I think has to creep in here a little bit is when you look at those market factors in terms of job opportunities and different openings out there, there has to be some hubris for these folks who are at these facilities thinking, you know what, if I don't feel comfortable because somebody either wants me to wear a mask or people aren't wearing a mask or whatever the dynamic is there, what's Ford going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to fire me. They can't even get people in the door right now to take these jobs. They're not going to fire me.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. Plus I've got UAW protection. So if my kid needs to go back to school shopping, if I'm not feeling great today, whatever the case is, I think they do feel more confident potentially in just saying, nah,
Yeah.
I'm not going in today.
I
Plus,
totally agree. Yeah.
Plus, it seems like they're building a lot of cars right now that can't be finished.
Yeah.
Basically, they're waiting for all the electronics and the chips to come in. So I just think this is workforce basically kind of calling their own shots.
Yeah. I mean, if temp workers are starting at $17 and they're through a temp agency, a cut of that hourly rate is going back to the agency too, making it even more in line with, McDonald's starting at 15. Well, I do think it is worker hubris. The UAW spokesman, Brian Rothenberg, actually challenged Farley's comments over the mask mandate causing the manufacturing challenges. He told the Detroit Free Press that UAW collaborated with GM, Ford, and Stellantis over these safety protocols, including the mask mandates. But instead of the masks being the issue, Rothenberg just said it's common for workers to use a majority of their vacation during the summer
During the
months.
summer, yep.
Yeah, so it makes sense. They're just all on vacation. That's it. They're
Well.
not taking a stand against mask mandates or upset about vaccines. They're just, going boating with the family.
In higher quantities.
And what I also found interesting is that the Detroit Free Press asked Ford's global manufacturing and labor communications manager, Kelly Felker, to confirm the 20% rate of absenteeism, and she refused. So, I mean, she gave a little cannot confirm or deny, but she said it was because they don't release those stats. But I feel like if your CEO goes firing them out into the public, maybe you should have his back a little bit.
She's like, I am not getting involved in this.
Yeah, right. Oh, why did he say that?
I have some vacation days to use.
Yeah. I don't know. What did you guys think of that? Is it just vacation?
I mean, that is true. I don't
Yeah.
think that that's like not true, that people do take a lot of their vacation time in the summer. That happens everywhere. But I do think that everything that we've touched on today is part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot of variables working together.
Okay.
How can there not be part of a culture just within those plants? I mean, if there's a thing where they're feeling uncomfortable, they don't actually see the finished product going out the door because they can't actually finish it. I think that's just going to impact your whole attitude about going to work on a given day. Plus, life is still happening. Still have all those other factors to consider. So, I think it's just a little bit of sort of a minor like employee revolt maybe at a little bit higher level than you would have seen it in the past.
Well, and he doesn't say where these plants are. He said 20% absentee rates at some plants. I mean, some locations of the U.S. are really dealing with very, very severe COVID outbreaks. So potentially people are not feeling safe at work on a production line.
Well, and we talk about it all the time where those are just basics, not beyond COVID pandemic, the basics in terms of making people feel respected and safe at work is what will keep them coming back. All right. Our next most popular story this week. New sinking halts repair of tilting San Francisco high-rise. The Millennium Tower in San Francisco was undergoing a $100 million fix to stop it from sinking. And then engineers watched it sink again during the repair. It sank 2.5 centimeters, or about an inch, and all work was stopped. The crew was trying to improve the building's foundation, but all work has been put on hold for up to 4 weeks so they can try and figure out what happened and how to stop it. The fix came after residents sued the developer and designers and reached a settlement that included the $100 million to install 52 concrete 140,000-pound piles to anchor the building to bedrock 250 feet below ground. The 58-story tower opened in 2009. The 419 apartments quickly sold out and have included very popular people like Joe Montana and Giants outfielder Hunter Pence. Woo. But not that popular. Yeah, no, I actually included that one specifically because I knew he angered people. And once again, Jeff, a tower spokesman said the building was safe. And I just don't believe him.
It's not getting better, right?
Right.
I mean, they're putting in these 70-ton pillars basically into the ground. And actually, there was a really interesting article. It was on the San Francisco Chronicle. It came out earlier this year, in which the editor of the article, I should actually shout him out here, Curtis Alexander, talked to a guy named Tom Parsons. He is a geophysicist with the U.S. Geological Survey. And what he's saying is basically the Bay Area has grown so fast, the ground literally cannot handle all the weight.
Really?
So what he is saying, now I have no way to put this in perspective, but when he added up the weights of all the buildings in the Bay Area, he put it at about 3.5 trillion pounds. Okay, I have no scope of what that means.
Seems large.
Yeah, that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about the growth of this area, it's because you've got all these tech companies and all these tech hubs, or what San Francisco has become, that whole area and its proximity to Silicon Valley. And basically, as all of these people have come to this area and built these huge buildings, these headquarters, Salesforce just put up a huge building in San Francisco. Basically, when you combine just the sprawl of the city with the fact that it's also a coastal area and you've got rising ocean elements to deal with, basically saying San Francisco has shrunk about 3 inches since the beginning of the century, or since the 1900s.
Okay, sunk the
whole area is down about 3 inches. Now, he offers no understanding as to why this Millennium Tower is that much worse.
Yeah.
But still, it's just amazing when you think about all of these really smart, innovative people going out to this area to, on some level, make the world a better place.
Yeah.
They've kind of made San Francisco a little worse.
Right.
Because they're building really big buildings in an area that just does not seem to be able to support it right now.
Oh, man,
It's kind of crazy.
I feel like there's an old timer argument in there somewhere because, remember 10 years ago when people were always talking about how they're learning how to create websites, design apps and stuff like that, but they don't know how to make anything actually tangible.
Yeah.
There's this tech hub creating, the internet of everything, but they're slowly sinking into the ocean and don't know it. It's just
that's basically what this guy is saying. And there's other huge buildings out there. They're just not leaning or sinking into the ground at the same rate.
I actually found a really interesting prediction from a geotechnical engineer, this guy, Larry Karp, who 2 years ago, he has 60 years of experience, and he predicted that this was going to happen. He says that it sounds relatively straightforward. When there's a loss of ground, the surrounding ground moves, and everything above it settles to fill the gap. So he said that this sort of could repair or lead to irreparable damage to the building, which is no kidding. Yeah. Well, his thing was that, so basically, when they drilled these oversized excavation holes, there's a slight gap in between the soil and these piles, and just that little gap is filling in, and that's what's causing the sinking. Jeez. And it's just, You hear that's what blew my mind, Anna, was that I was reading about this engineer who 2 years ago was like, yeah, don't do that. And they just decided not to listen to him.
My God.
Very frustrating.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that this is the tallest residential building in San Francisco. So it's kind of, uncharted territory a bit. But nobody can feel good about this after what happened in Surfside, Florida. I think people were stunned by that. And you got this feeling like buildings in the U.S. are,
Safer.
I hate to use too
Safer.
big to fail. I hate to use that term, but with the regulatory requirements and the quality of work. And, but I think that the situation in Florida, probably doesn't help these residents sleep at night. And it's my understanding that it's still considered safe to occupy. And this is despite some weird findings in recent years, like in 2018, when residents were hearing creaking and popping sounds. And then one resident in a corner unit on the 38th floor, 36th floor, discovered a cracked window. And the significance of that was that these windows are supposed to be able to handle hurricane gale winds. So they believe that crack was maybe a symptom of a much larger structural failure. This was in 2019. And despite the financial liabilities that the builder has accrued here and payouts and such to the residents, I can't imagine it's easy to sell this condo if you own one.
No.
Because, San Francisco and the whole Bay Area of California, I think the housing market shifted a bit during the pandemic because some people left the city because of remote work and whatever. So it's my understanding that rents have gone down. I think housing prices have leveled off a little bit in that very expensive area. And that's because people have moved out of the city. Some people have moved out of the city. There's just less pressure there. So if you wanted to unload this unit, it was hard before. It's super hard now, I bet. And then the more publicity this gets, I'm not, I know these people who own these units have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But you still feel bad for them.
Regardless of what they spent, you should not only feel, you should be safe in your home.
Exactly.
And you mentioned Surfside, and what was incredible about that is that it was sudden, but as everything came out, it seemed like maybe that wasn't so sudden, that there were a lot of red flags that people just neglected. Whereas, and this just feels like a lot of red flags.
A lot.
With a 58-story tower, Jeff, in the middle of the city.
In the middle of the city. But that's the thing is if this were to collapse or something, there is a ton of collateral damage. It is a very tight footprint that city's on. You know what I mean? A 58-story building, where does that go?
Everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I feel like they think they'll have a better idea as to what's going on because it's not in Florida there. I mean, they found all sorts of issues that were involved with the maintenance and the building materials and things of that nature. We just had another story that came out that basically they couldn't understand what happened with the concrete that was used in securing a lot of the joints and was used around a lot of the steel that was used in that building. Here, this is basically just Mother Nature going, no.
Too much.
No, this will not work here. So as opposed to, you do wonder at some point, this guy stuck $100 million into putting, how many of these things? 150?
Yeah.
70-ton pillars into the ground. I cannot even imagine the scope of that project, and it didn't work.
Well, that's the other, you were talking about, you guys on the podcast last week, we're talking about the installation of the Verizon cable, and the guy just hit a gas pipe, because he wasn't excavating properly. He wasn't using the proper digging technique. In this $100 million project to put 52, what'd you say, 7 ton?
70 tons.
70-ton piles into the ground, and they make the holes too big? Get a better hole digger.
Well, I don't, but I mean, you can say that, but to me, this just seems like this just doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
This now, and they've got all these other huge buildings out there that are having not tilting issues, but they're sinking as well, just at a much slower, I guess, palatable pace, if you will.
Acceptable sinking.
If that's a thing. At some point, you just got to say, this just isn't going to work. We need to chop off the top of this building or something. I don't know.
Well, and what is the answer? I mean, the top, it's leaning now 22 inches to the north and west. And I don't, at what point does it become unsalvageable?
You just I think you got to cut your losses here. I mean, we've been covering this building for how long? This is, a couple of years.
2016, maybe? Yeah.
So,
it's
get
incredible.
out.
Yeah.
Get out.
Well, let's get out of this story.
All right.
Wow. Well done.
Our next most popular story, cell phone catches fire on an airplane. Last week, after an Alaska Airlines jet landed in Seattle, a passenger's cell phone caught fire. The passenger's phone, quote, overheated and began sparking after the flight from New Orleans landed at about 8:30 p.m. on Monday and was waiting for the gate. The crew used fire extinguishers and a battery containment bag to stop the phone from smoking. But it got hazy inside the cabin, and the crew had to deploy evacuation slides to get everybody off of the plane. Anna, we've seen a lot of turbulent plane rides in the media lately. Everyone's running a little hot. I feel like someone's phone blowing up is not going to help the stress level at all in these
Turbulent plane rides.
Right.
Yep.
You're just dropping them all over. Aren't you?
I missed a week, so I'm like
Had to.
fully charged, bun-wise.
Fully charged.
Oh,
Phone story.
another
Wow.
unintended pun. I'm just
Unintended.
full of gems for the not.
Someone help me.
Anna?
Yes. So are phones only catching on fire on airplanes, or is that just what people want to read about? Because I don't think that's. I mean, I think phones catch on fire, but
Yeah,
but every time it happens on an airplane, it's like front page news.
Yeah, well, I mean, because of the potentially catastrophic,
Stuck on an
consequences.
airplane thing.
Yeah, well, there's hundreds of people on an airplane. If it catches on fire while you're just sleeping on the couch, I mean, it's a bummer, but yeah. You're
Yeah.
probably on like 8,
Yeah, there's
12.
kind of no place to go.
Except for when you're parked at the gate and you have evacuation slides in this case. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we all remember a few years back when Samsung was having like the worst year ever. I think it was 2016.
Yeah, the S7.
Yeah, their phones were starting on fire like crazy. One of their phone factories even started on fire.
Yeah.
Their washing machines were starting on fire. It's a miracle they were able to move past this incredibly terrible dump of a year. It was just bad.
Every device is bursting into flames.
I know.
You
As
should
soon
probably
as,
just
as
get
soon
out.
as you touch it, it just burns your skin off. But since then, it's been, I feel like, pretty quiet about like these phone explosions, which maybe has lulled us into a false sense of security. Because the fact of the matter is, lithium batteries actually can be a little sensitive. Like they're sensitive to temperature and pressure fluctuations. I even read that one way phones can start on fire on an airplane is when they fall between the crack of the reclining seat and get crushed in the mechanics. Because if you puncture a phone, it can start
Yeah.
on fire.
Really?
That's a thing that happens?
Oh.
How does it get punctured, crushed?
No, so like, you recline in your seat in an airplane because you're a monster.
Right.
And then your phone falls out of your pocket, crushed in the mechanics, and not only are you the monster
Just crushed.
up in the person's grill behind you, but your pants are on
Yeah,
fire.
they kick you. Your phone explodes.
Yeah. They're not kicking you, they're just giving you the subtle knee jab.
Yeah.
Just like,
Mine are not that subtle.
whoa. I can't believe they are, Jeff.
No.
Yeah. No, Jeff.
Beware of that scenario.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go down a little bit different route here. So what's interesting, you mentioned the Note 7 phones.
Right.
That was that like 2016? They were having trouble with those batteries.
Yep.
Right.
Well, guess what? Samsung is using the same battery supplier
Oh.
now that they did there.
Oh, cool.
It is, because why would you want to switch? So the company is called Amperex Technology Limited. They're a Chinese manufacturer of these lithium batteries. And what's interesting about them is they've expanded their business, okay? In addition to supplying these types of batteries for mobile devices, they're also getting into electronic vehicles.
I knew
Electric
you were going to say
vehicles,
cars.
excuse me.
That's a bummer.
And one of their biggest customers, can you guess who it might be? They
Toyota?
just signed a huge deal with the Tesla subsidiary in their Shanghai facility to supply batteries for their EVs and through 2025. What's interesting is a lot of people, when they look at this company, Amperex, they say that their technology is a bit dated. They use older materials. So they're using older materials, less reliable processes to create their batteries. Now, on the mobile devices, it's very rare, right, that these happen. They do get lots of headlines, like Anna said, especially when it happens on a plane when everybody panics and they've got to deploy, the emergency chutes and everything else. But doesn't that make you a little nervous to know that these are the same folks that are going to be putting vehicles into electric vehicles?
Or batteries in the vehicles.
Especially because they're kind of, I don't know if you can say cutting corners, but they're not using the latest technology because it is less expensive, which allows them to grow their business and be more profitable. Also makes them obviously look more appealing to somebody like Tesla.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, that's what Tesla promises, the state-of-the-art technology, and then you kind of peel back a couple layers.
Yeah.
And it's the people behind the exploding phone bring you the new Tesla battery.
And I mean, we have seen situations where all the heat that is in these batteries for electric vehicles, they can create a problem. It's rare. It's extremely rare, but you're still looking at a ton of heat. So, yeah, it does make you nervous a little bit to see that these folks are continuing to not only supply stuff for mobile devices, but potentially branching off and growing into cars.
Part of the, and actually, before we get to that, Anna, that's troubling.
I mean, yes, it is. I mean, back to my point about like, do phones only explode on planes, or do we only talk about phones that explode on planes? EV fires are covered much more regularly now than a traditional internal combustion engine vehicle fire.
Like failure, yeah.
And those vehicles start on fire too, actually a lot more. So I don't know. For what it's worth, I think people freak out about the battery stuff. I don't think it's happening as much as it is suggested based on the media coverage of those events. But
I would agree, but I think the thing that just sort of, says, puts the red light going in my mind is just when you see that they are somebody who's very open about the fact that they do use a less expensive route in getting to the finished product.
Right.
And when you see the growth, especially in China, of electric vehicles, when you see the growth of a company like Tesla, you just think this could possibly be opening the door to some serious catastrophes.
yeah.
Growing too fast. To the media coverage, I wanted to say that a lot of it has to be the cell phone footage that was released. Because did you guys see the video? It was the mother with her like small child, and she's just like, "Oh yeah, it looks like they're getting off the plane. Yep, they're evacuating in the slides. Look, they're going down the slides." And it just made, this entire incident a little bit weirder. And I think that's...
How about the flight attendants?
Yeah.
How quick they were with those fire extinguishers? That was incredible.
And not just the fire extinguishers, but what I found interesting was it opened my eyes to the world of fire containment bags. So this was something that I never even knew existed. These are hardcore bags that retail from anywhere from $500 to $1,000 per bag, and they can contain a 10,000 milliamp hour thermal runaway event. So that's like if a large external power bank that you use to power your phone or laptop started on fire or blew up, throw it in the bag, and it'll contain the fire, but it won't contain the smoke necessarily. These are based on the as my phone shuts down, as I'm looking at my computer shuts down. No, so a lot of these are built by Indiana-based Brimstone Fire Protection, which specializes in fire and explosion containment bags. And I found them very interesting because it's like this little Velcro bag that you throw the device inside and then goes inside another zipper bag. And they're used on everything from aircraft and boats and buildings, or settings that have limited exterior access, including the International Space Station and some mines. Now, what's crazy about them being used in mines is that I never even thought about this, but this could be potentially big for manufacturers and other industrial settings. Because when I hear something like buildings that have limited exterior access, I think, you're just in the middle of that high rise in New Jersey. I didn't think like, oh, what if you're in a mine and the battery on your tool starts on fire and everyone is suddenly in a lot of trouble? Because this actually happened. There was a fire at the Red Lake Mine in Ontario. There was a fire at the Red Lake Mine in Ontario, Canada, and it raised some red flags about using these lithium battery-powered hand tools.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, the problem is that these portable tools are extremely useful and convenient, so these job sites say they won't, abandon them, but basically where they stored all these batteries for their hand tools started on fire. And these 3 workers went to go and get batteries to charge their tools, and it was just ablaze underground. And that sounded terrifying to me.
Between this and the building thing, I'm not going to sleep tonight after we...
True.
I mean, we are covering some...
Yeah, and while the cause of this was, never determined, lithium-ion batteries are pretty touchy. If you drop some of these batteries...
They are.
Which I thought about because all of my battery-powered tools that I have for, landscaping at home, I drop the battery to my leaf blower every time I use it. And apparently that causes internal metal contacts to touch each other, overheat, and possibly catch fire. But within 30 minutes to an hour. So I'm safe now.
Okay.
But it's the next time that I got to be wary of.
Get the bag, man.
I'm going to get the bag because...
I'm going to get the bag.
Not only is it a steal at $5.95, but...
Is it reusable?
It's not reusable, but if you buy one and you have to use it, they'll give you a replacement for life.
Wow.
Oh, man.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
By the way, Runaway Thermal Event. Is that the name of Alex Shanahan's next band?
Runaway Thermal.
I mean, I think so. It's a
That
good
would be
follow-up to street names.
Be solid.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Our next most popular story this week. Say goodbye to 5 discontinued vehicles in 2022. Automakers are constantly introducing new models to keep their lineup fresh. To make room in the product lineup, they have to discontinue old models, and many consumers don't realize until they're gone. Edmunds recently highlighted 5 vehicles that will be gone after the 2021 model year. The vehicles include the Volkswagen Golf, because hatchbacks have fallen out of favor with many shoppers, the Mazda 6, one of a number of sedans that have been put to rest recently, the Volvo V60, a station wagon, because they still make those, but they're a niche vehicle that few automakers even bother with anymore, the Toyota Land Cruiser, a big traditional SUV that Edmunds called a dinosaur, and the Acura NSX, the all-wheel drive hybrid sports car. According to Edmunds, consumers want crossovers and SUVs, which is leaving very little room for any of these other models. Anna, were you surprised to see any of these cars go the way of the dinosaur?
Well, I was surprised that there weren't more small cars listed on there, but we know that that the victims of discontinuation tend to be these days small cars, right?
Right.
I wonder if consumers will ever regret the lack of small passenger vehicle options in the coming years. I mean, like we all have families with kids, and I'd like to point out that each of us, our families have an SUV, but we each also have a small car. I don't want or need a second SUV. I know I'm not like alone in enjoying the appeal of less fuel use, easier parking, sometimes you just have the second worker in your family is just a commuter and they're just using that car to go to and from work.
Right.
So I don't know. I read an interesting report in Vice that was published last year where they contend that there's a sizable market for small cars actually. And it's the car companies that don't want to sell them because their margins are so much higher on the bigger and more expensive vehicles. And sorry, I'm not trying to start a conspiracy theory here, but it's interesting to discuss, I think, because car companies tend to market their smaller models in times of high gas prices, but the rest of the time they're not trying that hard. It seems to make them appealing, which Vice says also plays a big role in reducing demand for them. And even this Edmunds report said that VW is kind of phoning it in with the latest Golf.
Yeah.
So you kind of wonder where the horse and the cart are on this situation, if it's really a lack of demand or if the automakers are maybe helping to nudge that along a little bit because they're trying to get out of those markets.
Right.
So despite the fact that there were only 2 listed here on this report that are considered small cars like that Mazda 6 and the Golf, there's more in 2022 for sure. I mean, this happens every year that just, 6 to 12 models go the way of the dinosaur. And we'll keep seeing it, I think.
Yeah. Jeff, you had to be surprised that cars like the Golf and the Mazda 6 were going to be discontinued.
I was because, just going back, I mean, automakers have always struggled with volume. It's something that's really difficult. And I think what you're seeing here is with a surge in SUVs, with the fact that they need to put a lot of dollars into R&D for electric vehicles coming out later on. They're making all these big promises about the number of EVs they're going to be putting out, how that's going to represent a greater proportion of the number of vehicles they produce. So I think they're trying to be proactive in sort of focusing their initiatives, their energy, whatever you want to say, their resources, and what they're going to put out the door. The ones that got me, like you alluded to, the station wagon, the V60, I don't know the last time I've seen a station wagon out on the road. I mean, they are pretty rare. Everybody's going to a minivan or something similar, or a small, or the CUVs. The bigger SUVs or the Nissan, expensive vehicles, so I wasn't surprised to see those go.
Acura, yeah.
The Acura. But I was really surprised at the Golf. There's over 35 million of these vehicles that have been sold during its lifetime, so they are out there. Wow. But I took a look at the sales numbers. And 2017, the Golf kind of hit its high point with over almost 69,000 of them sold in the U.S. throughout 2020, because it was a weird year, but by 2019, that was down to 37,000.
Oh.
So, I mean,
wow.
a dramatic drop. And with the M6, which was another one that I was really surprised at, the drop off was even more dramatic. When you look at 2015, it was selling over almost 58,000 of those vehicles in the US. By 2019, just over 21,500.
Yeah.
So the sales would seem to support the efforts or the thought process here by these automakers in terms of cutting them. It's interesting what you say, though, Anna, about the automakers also maybe sort of presenting this idea to the buying public as, well, this is what we have to do because you guys are telling us,
Yeah.
as opposed to also obviously having some of their own motives. And you know what? Automakers get to make money. So if they want to sell different vehicles to make more money off of it, that makes sense. I think it's going to be interesting when you see the GMs and the Fords of the world, once they really get immersed into the EVs, will they see some of these types of vehicles, these styles come back in terms of the more traditional sedan? Because once you get past all of that internal combustion engine and all of that infrastructure, if you will, of the vehicle and all that technology being more uniform with an electric vehicle, I think you might see some of these coming back and even at a price point that allows them to be more profitable.
I find it interesting that they were still selling tens of thousands of these and they're discontinuing it because the V60, they sold 385 of those so far this year. So
well, and I think like
with
with these two particular that I just mentioned, maybe not so much the Golf, but the M6, I think of a lot of rental car companies and fleets and stuff that are probably buying these, but at a pretty good price because of the quantity. So I think that also plays into some of these decisions.
Anna, do you think lists like this actually increase interest in these vehicles all of a sudden?
I do. I mean, it generates some nostalgia, I think, in people a little bit to be like, oh, like Volkswagen, those Volkswagen, like the station wagons are like what they did,
Oh, yeah.
So you sort of remember that from growing up, I think, is seeing those. But nowadays, like, what's the difference between a station wagon and a crossover? That's a real question. I don't really know.
No, when I looked up the because that's what it did for me. I was like, well, there's clearly a lot of V60s available if nobody bought one. And let's see what it looks like. Because we could check down to a station wagon if they're going to be cheap. And it is heinously ugly. It's curved, like it looks just like a crossover. It looks like a rental car crossover.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if the seat in the back is faced the other way.
Well, I thought the point of it was so you could like stuff a few extra kids in the back. Like without seatbelts. Now that you can't do that, what's the point of it?
Volvo also has a great reputation for safety. So I think that vehicle in particular, positive and negative, it's thought of as a super safe vehicle. Yeah. So it could also have some negative branding that goes with that, or some negative stereotypes, like, well, it's your mom's station wagon.
Oh, Ma Kettle over here.
Yeah,
with
right.
The V60.
So, yeah.
Well, the Yaris isn't getting any younger, and so Pa Kettle here is going to need something. And I mean, if I could get those screaming kids a row back,
but
further
5
back.
years ago, how would you have felt about that?
Oh no, just strong pass. I probably
that's when the numbers started coming down.
Yeah.
So way to go, David.
Well, I was also interested in the price points of some of these. Like that Acura is a $160,000 car.
Yeah, that's a niche.
Yeah, and
right
the
there.
Land Cruiser $90,000. Like, but yeah,
And it's an Acura and a Toyota.
Yeah.
Those don't go together.
Well, and the Golf and the Mazda were still around $25K. So it's just, I was kind of surprised to see the sedans go in particular as well. Whereas like the Acura made sense to me. Actually, when they called the Land Cruiser a dinosaur, I was like, oh, I will probably like it then. And looked it up and I'm like, this is pass. That's a big miss.
Well,
That
and I
needs
do
to go
wonder
away.
a little bit when you look at the M6 and the Golf. I mean, those could be vehicles that would have been bought by a lot of urban folks,
Yeah,
getting
people
around
in
the
town.
city because they're smaller, easier to get around, decent gas mileage and all that. So with the rise of Uber and Lyft, makes it a lot easier to catch a ride. Even some of the ride sharing stuff, maybe that's having an impact here as well.
Very good. All right, our most popular story this week, Sikorsky is closing a plant. In 2019, Lockheed Martin was going to close the Sikorsky Helicopters Division plant in Salisbury Township, a western suburb of Philadelphia. At the time, the company cited a tumble in orders from the oil and gas sector. As a stopgap, President Trump and local officials put together a plan that would allow the plant to work on Marine One helicopters that shuttle the commander-in-chief. The solution was a short-term fix, and the factory will officially close in March 2022. The company blames an overall downturn in commercial helicopter sector. 120 workers will be offered transfers, while 240 are expected to lose their jobs. Jeff, it seems like the writing was on the wall with this plant for a while, but I mean, you got to give them a little bit of credit for keeping it open for another 2 years, I think.
But it's interesting because when you look at what kept it open, it's not really a commercial aircraft. It's for a government application. Yeah. And I think that's really what's going on. I mentioned the one part in the article that stood out for me is when they talked about the commercial helicopter market shrinking. It's really not.
No.
All of the factors, all the economics I could pull up, it is not shrinking. It is a growing market, but it's becoming much more competitive.
Right.
Airbus especially is really getting involved in this market. That's a huge competitor to try to deal with. And that's not Lockheed Martin, who is the parent company of Sikorsky. That's not where they work. That's not where they live. So to me, this feels like Sikorsky is sort of following the trend of Lockheed Martin and going for more military applications. That's where their business focus is. It's where their core competencies are as a company. We just ran a story about them getting a big Black Hawk deal.
Yeah.
Again, that's a military aircraft. So can appreciate a lot of the different dynamics that went in 2019 to preserving some of these jobs. We're always pro jobs here, but at the same time, this feels like more of a strategic decision made further up the chain. Granted, it was great that they could hang on and put those additional helicopters together for the White House, but I think the writing was on the wall here a while back.
Well, that Black Hawk deal is kind of like a good and a little bit of bad because they have an uptick in orders for firefighting helicopters.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's two of the areas, right, where there is a surge in commercial helicopters. It's search and rescue and firefighting.
No, I was surprised with the language they used too, because when you looked at Grandview Research in 2019, actually predicted steady growth of the U.S. commercial helicopter market through 2025. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe the pandemic, right? But then Fortune Business predicted even greater exponential growth of the global helicopter market through 2028 and said that the pandemic, while it hurt due to significant disruption in manufacturing and supply chain, it only had a 2% growth rate in 2020, but believes that the market will actually quickly return to pre-pandemic levels in the near future. So Anna, I agree with Jeff. I think that this is more of them shifting their focus rather than there being a problem with the commercial helicopter market.
Right. And you have to trust the company to make these decisions. And I think in this case, things kind of got muddled. Like when that plant was slated to close in 2019, the CEO of Lockheed announced its day of execution, I guess, if you will, with the following statement, quote, "At the request of President Trump, I took another look at our decision to close the Coatesville facility and decided to keep it open while we pursue additional work." And to me, take another look is about as opaque as you can get. You can't tell me the initial decision was taken lightly. It's extremely costly to close the plant before you make any of that money back.
Right.
I can't imagine that they were doing that without exploring every available option and strategically, as you said. I'm not speaking to Mr. Trump's efforts here compared to any other politician who tries to step in and save a failing operation. But it reminds me of what happened at the Carrier plant in Indiana. I sometimes think politicians don't quite understand the economics of discrete manufacturing. I think in this case, and the local politicians maybe implemented a short-term fix that was just delaying the inevitable. Sikorsky kind of has to go along with it because it's terrible press to say they'd rather close the plant than turn down what's viewed as like a lucrative government contract.
Yeah. And they did have a viable reason. They were given a viable reason.
Right, they were, yeah. But, I mean, what would have helped the Sikorsky plant? It's literally surrounded by helicopter plants. This region is well known for its helicopter production. As you said, the market is becoming more competitive, and there's a lot right there. So I don't think that helped, Yeah. So in the end, are these workers better off that they had a couple more years at the plant? I hope so. But it's hard to know. And I think that this being a strategic decision, as you said, I think this was inevitable.
Well, I wonder, was it, does the company know that this is just a temporary stopgap?
That's the thing.
Yeah, because I saw that the local representative said, Chrissy Houlihan said, after spending the last 2 years working with Lockheed Martin, White House officials in 2 administrations, and state and local partners to find ways to enable the plant to continue operating, she's frustrated and disappointed that we find ourselves here. But I read that and I was just like, there should be no surprise that you find yourselves here. You know, like the work dried up 2 years ago. You were given a lifeline and it dried up again. So I don't know, maybe there should have just been better communication as to like, maybe Sikorsky has to say like, hey, just a heads up. This is great. But when it ends, we're done.
Well, and you have to acknowledge that the helicopter manufacturing experts that run this company have looked at a lot of angles here. You know, it's just not an issue of like some rep coming in and saying like, we will work this out for you forever. I mean, how does that even work?
Well, and I understand some of the anger because Sikorsky used a state grant to expand the plant in 2014, and it's one of several that are in the region. So, you know, I understand if the state invested in it in 2014, Jeff, maybe they expected that the work wouldn't have dried up so quickly thereafter.
Maybe. I mean, what's Sikorsky supposed to say?
Yeah, but it's another 5 years.
No, don't give me that.
Exactly.
I don't want the government aid. I don't want the job contract to keep us going, because at the end of the day, there could have been another one coming as soon as this one was done. You have to at least leave those options on the table. Yeah. So I don't blame Sikorsky at all. I think this is just the market spoke.
Yeah. No, I don't either. And don't mishear me. That's not what I meant at all. I just think that it was a complicated web of variables. And I think
it's hard not to think there was a political agenda here. Okay, I mean, not to get like
everyone's
too far
walking on eggshells here
into this, but I mean, it's Pennsylvania. It was a swing state. It was right before an election. I mean, okay. I mean, there's no way that wasn't part of this. That's what happened. But you couldn't delay the inevitable here.
Well, and to both your points, like it puts Sikorsky in a really sticky situation where they can't turn down the free money, and you know, because it makes it look like they're turning their back on the workers.
Yeah. So I think the higher ups at that facility knew it was going on. They took it and went with it to see what else could happen. And it worked out.
Yeah, hoping something else happened. All right, let's move on to In Case You Missed It. Anna, let's start with you. What was your In Case You Missed It this week?
Sure. So last week, Elon Musk tweeted that Tesla's latest full self-driving beta version 9.2 is, quote, not great.
The technical, innovative genius of Elon Musk truly on display.
He went on to elaborate, saying that the AI/autopilot team was, quote, rallying to improve it as fast as possible. And I loved this story because you think at first that you're catching a rare moment of humility from Elon Musk, because I 100% believe that it's not great.
Yeah.
But then later that same day, he tweets that his next version, 9.3, which he happens to have tested immediately following his not great tweet, is much improved. He just drove it after that. And he's like,
guys,
we've made a lot of progress after lunch today.
Yeah.
And
well, no, I'm sure that some autopilot engineer saw that tweet and was like, hold on. We got to get the big man on the red phone and let him know 9.3 is going to be a winner.
It's ready, Elon. 9.3 is ready.
Yeah, come on down and take a spin.
Yeah, take it to Del Taco for the afternoon. Don't even come back if you don't want to. That's fine. So
they brought in bagels for breakfast, and not everybody was in a better place.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
I don't know. The whole story was dumb and funny, and in all seriousness, we've discussed autopilot before and the way it's designed versus the way it's perhaps perceived by customers, and how they perceive that it's more capable than it is. I think we have to cater to the lowest common denominator here when it comes to systems in a several $1,000-pound vehicle that could easily kill the occupants and others around it if it's not used correctly. So in July, Elon said that users of the beta should be, quote, paranoid, and that the system, direct quote, may do the wrong thing at the worst time. So let's just roll it out for public testing, basically with these Twitter caveats, and just see what happens. I mean, I think it's irresponsible. I know there's a role here for personal responsibility, but I don't love that this is perfectly legal and all you need is it's like $10,000 to be part of the program.
Yeah, the beta program?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can pay and just try it out, and there's no law against that. But they're really, guinea pigs on public roads with this very new technology that...
what was that phrase again? The worst? What was it?
Let's see. What did it say? It may do the wrong thing at the worst time.
The wrong thing at the worst time.
Yeah. It's a sales
I think
point.
I know some guys, it's their personal mantra.
Yeah. It also, I mean, to that effect, it seems to have one heck of a problem with flashing lights. And I gotta say though, also Musk, we say it all the time, but he's a spin master. He knows exactly what he's doing in terms of tweeting out like, hold on. I'm gonna cop to it real quick. Ready? Mm-hmm. All right, hold on. Give it a couple hours.
Yep.
Then hit him with the 9.3.
Solution.
Yeah.
The real
Right
question
here.
is, did Ford or GM immediately file a lawsuit over copyright infringement over the phrase "not great"?
No. Well, I figured you were gonna say 9.3. We actually already owe 9.3. No, I think it's like you said, it's a rare glimpse that him actually, for what it's worth, admitting that. Do you think that when he comes out and says things like, "Hey," where he very publicly declares that it might not be safe, is he kind of like trying to protect himself a little bit?
I don't know. He just plays so fast and loose with like the SEC and what he's saying and publicly that he's probably not supposed to be saying. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, Jeff, I feel like a part of me hears that and just says, he's, that's something that could be used against him in a lawsuit. And then at the exact same time, he could use it to defend himself. I told the world about it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's doing. Basically just covering all bases.
Yeah.
You know what, guys, I warned you it wasn't great, but
Yeah.
maybe it is.
Man, that's going to be such a viral moment when they're like, at what point did you tell the public that the technology was not great? He just like scrolls through his Twitter feed.
Boom.
Says not great.
Yeah, but I mean, like, are we just, that's fine with us as consumers that he just like puts safety precautionary language on his Twitter feed? Like,
Well, I put it two ways. Number one, no. Okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're not forced to do this.
Mm-hmm.
There is a consumer decision to be made. And do I think that that should be available? No, I think it's way too soon. I think there is a corporate responsibility there. But man, you can't stop people from buying stuff.
I know, but a lot of the other automakers have been beholden to these like strict regulatory requirements about how they test their autonomous vehicle technology. I don't know how this one is not there. Like those, like look at all the companies that were testing on not public roads
Yeah.
at night, like just in very specific areas only.
Mm-hmm.
They had to have backup drivers. I don't know. I don't understand how this can be just like rolled out, not finished, and we're just going to let whoever.
It's an option.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
know
the
it's an
only way
option.
to
Yeah.
drive the vehicle. I think that's how
Yeah.
he can get past it. Plus, I mean, the scale is obviously very different.
It's very different, and they've said that they are like pulling people out of the program if they can determine that they're being inattentive. So it sounds like Tesla is trying to make a show of the fact that they are monitoring how this tech is being used and by whom. It's not just rolled out there for everyone.
What does that waiver form have? That has to be like 3
I don't
inches
know.
thick
Yeah.
for somebody to sign up on that.
I mean, it's 3 inches thick, but it's like all the other ones where you just scroll to the bottom and click the box. Read it.
Select all.
Yeah, terms and conditions accepted. No, but it's also it made me think about nothing that I can remember. Jeff, what's your in case you missed it? No,
We'll circle back, David.
no, yeah, because about the autonomous car, like, it's still not coming to me, Jeff. So what? Jeff, what's your in case you missed it this week?
A different technology company, or
Okay.
a couple of them actually. I think President Biden has been very proactive in terms of getting on top of the cybersecurity issues because it's not just a private thing anymore. It's not just about data from a credit card company or anything like that. It's attacking infrastructure now. We saw that with the pipeline. We've seen some other like water treatment facilities being susceptible to these types of attacks. So earlier this week, the White House basically got together a bunch of really smart people and said, hey guys, we have to get after this. And what came out of it was a couple of companies, Google and Microsoft, both pledging $10 and $20 million or $20 billion, excuse me, let me make sure I got that right. $1 billion, okay? $10 and $20 billion over the next 5 years to help educate and initiate greater cybersecurity programs that'll be available to everybody, okay? So not just technology companies, not just our public infrastructure, but everyone. Make everything more secure because it's not just an issue that impacts a small group of people anymore. Now it's becoming almost a form of warfare as well and terrorism. So it was it was great to see this type of energy and this type of resources being dedicated towards this particular topic, especially when we look at our readers in the industrial sector who, if they had to be very honest, don't know and understand this stuff as well as they would want to or have to now anymore. So these types of resources being available, and the fact that Google and Microsoft both stepped up and made these types of pledges, granted a pledge is great.
Yeah.
Follow through here, guys. I think could just help our industry overall just become that much more effective and have one less thing to worry about at night. What was interesting is after the meeting, and I'm just quoting the article here, the White House announced that Google had committed to invest $10 billion in cybersecurity over the next 5 years. The next paragraph is Microsoft said it would invest $20 billion in cybersecurity. So it's kind of like,
where are you at, Amazon?
Let them go first, and then we'll double it.
Yeah.
$30 billion. Jeff Bezos, sit down.
Yeah.
So good stuff. Hopefully that does trickle down to the industrial sector in greater quantities, so we can protect all of the important elements that go into the backbone of our country.
So I think I see what you're getting at here, and I'll just say it. David, it's time to update your McAfee.
No, disagree. I mean, it's great that these industry leaders came out a short 30 years after the technology was widely available to give us a couple of patchwork fixes. But
Wow.
no,
That's a bit cynical.
Yeah.
have you seen how many times I've had to click the flag off? Just
It keeps popping
I
up.
don't need to renew you, McAfee.
It's like $6.
It's been so long that he gets an alert every 30 seconds now.
Yeah. So what? You're willing to throw a sandwich at this thing just for a little security?
Yeah.
No, I'll take the sandwich.
Yeah. You can't even buy a sandwich for $6 anymore.
You can at Subway, but you'll regret it.
Yeah, they definitely said that everything has been, I saw the popular commercials that say everything's been upgraded. Everything's so much better. And I went into a Subway, still Subway.
Yeah, we were like, what was happening before? That they're just like, we are doing it right this time.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
It's our freshest fresher. Yeah, it's just like, nope, all the little containers still have the same condensation at the top. And I will take the wet leaves here, put them on top of those wet leaves, and can I have the flavorless sauce on top of it, please?
Yeah,
Yes.
this is lettuce now.
Subway is not going to sponsor this podcast.
No,
That's
sorry.
all right.
Yeah.
I don't need their food stuff sponsoring us.
You're going there for lunch, aren't you?
Probably, yeah. Okay. I'm not going to eat my salad. All right. Mine, in case you missed it this week, workers to split $650,000 after a one-day layoff notice.
I'll take it.
I'm sure they're all right with it, too. Merrill, Wisconsin-based Semco recently reached a settlement with the Wisconsin Department of Justice to pay employees more than $650,000 after shutting down operations on December 31st, 2019. The Wisconsin DOJ sued the company for failing to provide the required 60 days notice to employees before ceasing its business operations. On December 30th, 2019, Semco Windows and Doors notified employees that it was closing the doors the next day.
New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve.
Rude.
Happy New Year. Take everything out of your locker.
Drink a lot.
Yeah, drink
It's
a
fine.
lot.
You don't have to come in.
But drink the cheap stuff because no more revenue. No more money coming in. A lack of orders and financing problems caused 140 employees to lose their jobs. Well, a lawsuit filed by Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul was seeking $682,864 in wages and benefits that would have accrued during the time from when notice was required until the date of closure. Earlier this month, Semco mailed checks directly to eligible employees, and the straight division works out to about $5,000 per worker, but the checks will obviously vary based on experience and what they had coming. But I just thought that this was an interesting story of some workers actually getting a little bit of justice after they were screwed on New Year's Eve 2 years ago. Jeff, were you familiar with the story?
No, but I liked how you worked in shut the door for a windows and door company.
Yeah.
Good work.
Yeah, they slammed it
continues.
shut on their
It
hopes and
continues.
dreams.
Never ends.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that they did have to give 60 days notice like that to shut
Yeah,
down.
the warn.
Yeah.
But I think it's overall really positive. I mean, that had to be just kind of mind-blowing for these employees
Yeah.
to be at work one day and think you got at least some stability and going into the new year of all times. And
No kidding.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good on the Wisconsin Attorney General for going after him.
No, completely agree. I mean, you hear anecdotal stories of like when Ground Round went under and there was the letter on the door saying like, sorry, even if you have stuff in the locker, you're not going to get it because we're done. But no, it was good to see that, at least a little bit of relief for the workers in northern Wisconsin here.
Yeah. And you think, though, like if the attorney general hadn't picked up this case to move forward with it, what happens? You
No,
know?
I mean nothing. Like to Jeff's point, I mean it was good on him for doing that. And I mean, they actually have to do a little bit of due diligence. They have like 90 days after the settlement to mail all the checks. After, all the checks have gone out, they have to do a bunch of accounting to let people know who was missed or who didn't receive the payment. So it seems like overall a little bit of good is happening.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move on to our final thoughts this week. Anna, what's your final thought?
Well, I got a first grader starting on Thursday, which is pretty big league. Got some light up shoes all set to go.
Right.
Super excited. I can't wait for her. She's like, it's been a kind of a tough year with 2020 and not getting to see her friends and stuff. So she's pretty amped up.
What was the like big school supply thing, like either for her or like to find? Because it seems like there was always one thing on the list you couldn't find.
Oh yeah, I definitely had to resort to Amazon for like, they like tell you how many crayons to have in a box.
What?
Yeah.
There's a standard box of crayon size?
So like, yeah, there was like the 18 pack and then like
18?
the 100 pack, but I needed the 24. So I had to order that. But
I would have just taken the 100 pack and like
tape some on the outside.
like only had 24 in there. And just like he'll come back for spares. No, the light up shoes though, that is, I don't know. I mean, how teachers deal with that. Because just in a daycare
migraines.
with like 15 kids with light up shoes, I'm like, I mean, I bet this is really cool for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then just really annoying.
I know.
Because, I mean, to that point, Des will just stomp his feet and yell lights for hours.
Yeah.
So
It's not just functional.
yeah,
It is,
no.
It's actually not at all functional.
No, not at all. Jeff, before we get into your final thought, I would like to add, for mine, I had a couple of, first of all, I wanted to say thank you to Andy Zell for stepping in last week. Had to bail and help out the house because everyone got sick immediately, but everyone's all good. But there were some points on the last episode
Oh, here we
that
go.
I did
We are
take
gonna-
issue with. One point, my name's not Dave. No,
I thought
I
it
don't-
was
I don't get it.
Dave.
it's not Dave. It
This
is
whole
David.
time.
We've known you for 15 years. You've never said this before.
Point two that I've never said always, it is what it is an abomination as a phrase and should be outlawed.
Do you still have your "It Is What It Is" T-shirt?
No, I gave it to my brother-in-law because he works a tough job and I knew it would be shredded systematically as he put roofs on homes. Finally, Jeff, how many turkey legs did you eat?
Well, I'm a little disappointed in myself, but it was a really hot day. So it was more about the beer than the turkey legs. I did have one, and I did eat it in as medieval a fashion as you could imagine. I was pretty aggressive with that turkey leg. It was delicious, though.
Nothing like a hot turkey
But it
leg
was only
on a
one.
95-degree day.
I had one.
Yeah.
And
But
then
it
you
was
got to
great.
throw it over your shoulder.
Yeah.
It was wonderful, though.
Any axe or knife throwing?
I did a crossbow.
Nice.
That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun.
Did it get caught in your chainmail shirt? Sorry.
Oh, you know what?
I was wearing armor.
I bet
I went
actually,
all the way.
the like whatever the chainmail is that goes down and around, like
There was people wearing those. Like, I have to admit, it was a cool thing going to the Renaissance Fair. Just seeing how many people really got into it with their outfits and stuff and their costumes, and it was actually really cool.
It
Like,
sounds super fun.
It was a blast.
I love the Renaissance Fair. I just like the idea of you getting after turkey legs and then it winds up being like 100-degree day.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Well, I feel like
that's the
I
hottest
feel like shot the crossbow, ate a turkey leg,
Yeah.
drank some mead.
yeah.
No,
no,
I think I
Hot,
filled.
hot mead
Yeah.
in August.
Meat is actually solid. Like
It is.
Yeah, we have. I mean, because Madison just can't help itself. There's obviously a meadery, and as soon as it opened,
That's
I'm like,
right.
yeah,
I mean,
I'm like,
there is a meadery.
yeah, I'm going to need to inquire about this, and it is delicious, but it is not a. It's not a long.
You like mead, but you don't like beer.
Yeah, it's like a weird
interesting.
stuff. Yeah, it's the in between. But that like when you go and see shows at the meadery, you're not in it for the long term with the mead. You know, it's a sipper.
Yeah.
Oof,
You're
yeah.
getting-
You can't like toss them back.
No, you're getting full before you're getting drunk. Yeah. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
So it's kind of another, in case you missed it, we ran a story on Oscar Mayer
Oh,
teaming up with Lyft. So they're going to surprise somebody when they call for a Lyft XL. They're going to show up with the Wienermobile.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of wondering how this would go over. Because, you know, like when we would travel together, you know, and we'll, you know, show up at the airport or something like that or from a hotel. Like, do you really want to take the Wienermobile, like, to your hotel or the convention center or something?
Yes.
Really?
I do, but I know, and I particularly do, if we're traveling with two other people in this office. And, like, they get that, you know, the XL's coming and they're like, you know, where's the black Suburban? And then this comes firing up and it's just like, we're headed to the cigar bar. Let's do it.
Yeah, why would you not want it?
I don't know. Just what if you have clients or something too? Like, I don't know. I don't think this would go over well.
Still,
Goodness. That is such a talking point for the lifetime of your relationship. Just like, hey, remember 30 years ago when our Lyft showed up and it was, you know,
the Wienermobile?
The Wienermobile? Oh, man. Yeah.
I don't know.
Jeff, you're doing it wrong.
That's one of the things about when Oscar Mayer went under in Madison is like, they used to have the fleet parked here. You would see them all the time.
I actually interviewed somebody who like was part of the crew that drove this around and stuff. And like, they're very selective. They pick college students every year to drive them around the country and stuff. Yeah. Pretty amazing, like internship, if you will, because it leads to other things at Oscar Mayer for those folks. But
what was your
interesting way to see the country?
How many people fit in a hot dog?
I think they have a crew of 2 or 3 that are always like in the vehicle.
You got a pilot. And you got a co-pilot.
Well, they're driving everywhere, right? I mean, so got to switch off.
So, I mean, like, how many people could you pick up as your Lyft?
I mean, looking at this thing, I'm thinking you could put a solid 6 in there, right?
A solid 6.
A solid 6. No comments that I have about this vehicle is at all appropriate.
And that's the podcast.
All right.
We do have one comment from a listener, Carrie, said that Hot Meat is actually another great band name.
Ooh, I agree, Carrie. Yeah.
Maybe after street names, and then what's the one you came up with?
What was it?
Something event.
With the bat, with the
Runaway
thermal events. When that breaks up, Hot Mead. You're gonna need like a ukulele and a mandolin. All right. Well, very good. Thank you everybody for watching us live. We'll be back on time on Friday. You know, as long as,
we hope.
Yeah, as long as some other parasite doesn't, you know, shut down my daycare. But before we get out of here, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. To email the podcast, you can reach any of us. Doug, you can reach any of us, loyal listener Doug, at Jeff, Anna, or David at IEN.com with email the podcast from loyal listener Doug in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletters. Make sure you get it in your inbox first. All right. For Jeff and Anna, I'm David Manti, and this is the Today in Manufacturing podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.